let's talk about the executive order, fam, because this one here is a big one. I think that this might really go far for Donald Trump wrapping up his re-election, because the Dems got caught flat-footed again. And I think they tried to play hardball with Trump in this situation, and it didn't work. And whether they go through with this executive order or if they go back to the table, it's still going to look like Trump was making a move while the Democrats couldn't. Where once again, they did do nothing.
He pressured. He made them look bad because he did something and they hadn't done anything.
Yeah. So if they go back to the table, it's going to look like he brought them back to the table for a deal.
Right.
So, I mean, I don't know how they can twist this right now. They're trying to. But let's go over Trump's video. Let's take it down. Let's start breaking it down about what this executive order was about, what Trump was not going to do. When it came to the HEROES Act, he was not going to let this stuff go through for the election.
Right.
Okay. And to be honest with you, as an election integrity activist, I want more reforms on our elections. Nobody's talking in the right place, but I would still like the conversation to go. It has got no place in an act right now where we just need direct assistance to the people. Not an 1,800-page bill. We needed a 4-page bill, get money out to the people, tape shit up until we can get shit done. We didn't get that. So let's go into this 213 to 313 real quick. Take a look about what he's talking about, what the Democrats were trying to do and what he was stopping.
Mr. President, there is a lot of criticism today from Democrats about your executive order. How do you see talks going forward? Do you think talks will start again?
So the Democrats were just unwilling to do anything, and all they wanted to think about was how to steal an election. We discussed it yesterday, Jeff, where they wanted all sorts of things having to do with mail-in voting. They wanted no signature verification. They were asking for things that just had nothing to do with what we're talking about. And we've been going through this routine for a long time, number of weeks, and it was time to act. And actually, we've been largely praised. We have to get money out to the people. It was China's fault. They did this horrific thing. It was China's fault. We have to get money out to the people. So I would say, I mean, you may say that, you know, you've heard some negatives, but I've heard mostly positives. Mostly positives, even from people that you at least think would be very positive.
I'd like the talks to start again.
I hear that's what the Democrats want to do now. They want, look, they were not interested in doing what they had to do.
I just had this article up in the USA Today, too, Johnny. You can put that up. We'll play another part as you get it ready. But it says the fact check. The HEROES Act would eliminate state requirements for voter IDs in federal elections. It's a little unclear exactly what it would have done. Would have done. But there was a ton of money inside. Where's that? Damn, I just lost the page. There was a ton of money in there for $3.6 billion in election security measures in response to the activists, the politicians are concerned about holding elections amid the pandemic. So there was money in there for the elections. There were rule changes in the elections. It would have changed some of the laws. They wanted to go and amend pretty much an act. It said, where's it at? I want to make sure. They wanted to inside this here, they wanted to amend a certain act that would allow them, and if enacted, the HEROES Act would overrule those state laws as pertain to federal elections, meaning President and Congress, and simplify identification requirements across all the states by adding sworn written statement as applicable identification. Section 16.00004 of the HEROES Act would amend the Help America Vote Act of the 2002 legislation. So they were trying to make a move inside the HEROES Act to change some laws, to put some money there, and that's what they were talking about when it came to the Congress. Is like, you want $3 trillion in this act, and we're not going to give it to you. With the Democrats, meet you halfway consolidation was, well, just come down $1 trillion, and we'll make it $2 trillion. And they said, nope, no way, what not? And that's why Trump jumped in for an executive act.
So I just want to explain to people, I'm not saying what Trump has offered, and we're going to go over it in a minute, is really like meager. It's really not much at all. It doesn't really protect people from evictions. It doesn't really give people much. $400 is nothing. We should have at least kept at the $600 or gone up. The problem with the Democratic Congress, though, and the Senate, is that they try to put in things that have nothing to do with the coronavirus, things for them that serve their interests, that line their pockets. Okay, and both sides do it, but in this case, that's what Trump was referring to, that they filled this bill with all this crap that has nothing to do with it, and he even said it. So unfortunately, he can use that against them because they freaking did it, and that's what's part of the delay that nobody talks about. It's not as simple as, oh, the Republicans don't want it. Yeah, a lot of them are assholes and they don't want to give people anything, and they just want to give it to the corporations. But it's also that on top of that, you have Democrats trying to get their interest in there. And so who gets lost? The people in the simple relief that they need, the direct money and the direct stimulus that they need. All of that gets lost and pushed aside because they're trying to play politics with each other. Yeah. And so that's what this is a problem. So Trump coming in and saying that is important.
Yeah. And let's be honest, too, in the Democratic Heroes Act, there really wasn't a lot of help for rent. There wasn't like a rent cancellation whatsoever. So they were also kicking that can down the road. Right. Now they're saying in Trump's executive order, he does somewhat of the similar thing. However, there are loopholes in which there will be evictions. Yeah. We have to take a look at that. But once again, it's not like the Democrats were sitting there and offering rent cancellation. They were offering the same thing. And the odd thing about it to me is that people are so myopic that this is something they're going to let Trump get away with and say, well, at least Donald Trump is doing that. Like, no, he's kicking the can down the road till after the election. So in the beginning of the new year, when people start getting thrown out of their houses, it's going to be a problem. And I really wish he would have took it on. Remember, we said if he extended the unemployment and he did something about the rents, like he did an actual rent cancellation, he's going to get elected. I still think that this is enough to maybe push him over the finish line because the Democrats are so friggin' bad. And like I said, no matter what, they're going to make Donald Trump has put Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer in a position to look like schmucks. They're going to look like schmucks. Johnny, go play the second part of what also he says from 6:52 to 7:32 real quick on the video. He also talks more about this, about elections. Interesting stuff here.
But there's some criticism that the postmaster's policy is what's causing the mail delays. Do you think now is the time to be delaying the mail and should there be some confusion and money?
Well, in light of the stories that are coming out about all of the problems with mail-in voting, whether it's the congressional race, Carolyn Maloney, in New York where they called it, they don't even have the ballots. The whole thing is crazy. There's one that just came across my desk, and I'm going to look into it, but I hear it's a catastrophe on mail-in voting. We just can't have that. It's you got to have an honest election. And if it's not going to be an honest election, you have to call them out.
Mr. President, you were saying...
So, once again, he's pointing to the whole, they're trying to cheat the election by doing the mail-in, eliminate voter signatures, pretty much. There is an ideological argument there about as far as who should be able to vote and who shouldn't be able to vote. And I probably lean more towards the Democrats when it comes to that, who's allowed to vote and who shouldn't vote. You know what I'm saying? However, it's all the freaking mechanisms that the Democrats and the cheating they throw in with that. They use it as a shield to say, oh, we got to let people with no voter verification be able to vote. And if they don't have ID, they should be able to vote. Okay, that's one thing. But then when you start loading up and stuffing the ballot box, that's when it becomes a problem, and they got caught with their hands in the cookie jar
So
before.
Both things are true. Trump is obviously doing this because of himself, because he cares about looking good and looking like he's going after people. Republicans tend to pay more attention to voter fraud than election fraud. There's voter fraud is when the voters themselves are committing the fraud. Election fraud is when people are committing the fraud. You don't know who it is. And then voter suppression is obviously the long lines, whatever. So the Republicans usually implement voter suppression tactics, like ID laws, etc. But the Democrats do a lot of the voter fraud or the election fraud, where they are going the machines in general. Both parties, right? The machines are proprietary software. They're not public. They're not transparent. People don't get to see the process that goes on. We've seen the race between Tim Canova and Debbie Wasserman Schultz regarding the ballots, that the way they were kept. I mean, we have found empty tubs of ballots in Wisconsin. These past primaries where the ballots weren't counted. There were tubs of them. This isn't something we're making up. This is real. You can definitely tamper with envelopes and vote by mail. Now, a lot of people argue, like our friends in Washington State, because they do this like on the regular, that it's actually better, and you tend to have less corruption in the elections, in the primaries, because they can go and find the ballots and the signatures. So what they do in Washington is, like, if there's a signature that they say, oh, it's not matching, you go find the person and you verify the signature. It's like chasing ballots is what you can do. So they reportedly have like some of the better elections. However, Washington is one state. If we had just straight up vote by mail in every state where there are interests and politicians that seek to benefit from whoever gets in office, then it won't necessarily work, because we're not tackling the full crux of the problem, the source of the problem, which is our entire election system has to be revamped.
Yeah. And they have their issues too with their mail-in problems, with their mail-in votes too as well. You know, where it's coming from. It's an independent company once again, kind of like giving up all the data, and you know, a friendly mail-in company. If you're like, for instance, if I'm a friendly vendor and the establishment comes to me and says, do this, do that, I can really affect the results, because the audit process is ridiculous in California, especially Los Angeles. It's like 1% in Los Angeles. So I can load, like I said, if we were to peel open Los Angeles's ballots and if we were to do an audit in Los Angeles, I bet you'd see a lot of unjust, not earned votes for Joe Biden in the mail-in ballot section over there, because that's where a lot of them came in early. So, then you throw in the voter suppression, these lines keeping Bernie Sanders voters from voting, and now you just have the perfect storm. If you need any more help, the back of the end, you got proprietary software, you can fix it back there. But the important thing is to understand that these attacks are coming from within arm's length. They're not coming from China. They're not coming from Iran. They're not coming from Russia. They're coming from help of the legislation and independent actors within our country, elites, corporations. Let's go to on extending the unemployment benefits parts, because this is the thing that I think that we need to talk about, and it really might put Donald Trump over the top. 349 to 442.
Jonathan?
On the issue of the unemployment insurance, the $400, there was some criticism from Democrats saying that a lot of states can't afford to do their part, to do the $100. Would the federal government up with the willing to give?
Yeah, we have a system where we can do 100% or we can do 75%. They'd pay 25%, and it'll depend on the state, and they'll make an application. We'll look at it and we'll make a decision. So it may be they'll pay nothing in some instances. It may be a little bit like the National Guard. You know, the National Guard, as you know, sometimes will pay all of it depending on the tragedy or whatever it may be, the disaster. And sometimes the state will pay 40%, 25%, 10%, or nothing, depending on how it works out. So this will be, we can make a decision on that on individual states with an application. Okay?
So in the article, Johnny, that I put right below that, there's just one part it's kind of highlighted. It says 300 comes from the federal funds. If you go right there, 300 comes from the federal funds, and 100 to be paid by the states. So the president has revealed that 300 of the 400 will be paid with federal money, while the states would have to make up the remaining 100. According to Trump's executive memorandum, the renewal of enhanced unemployment insurance takes effect as of August 1st, with job seekers able to claim extra benefits retroactively up to that point. And it is the last until Sunday, 6 December, or when the balance of the Department of Homeland Security's Disaster Relief Fund falls to $25 billion, whatever happens earlier. According to the memorandum, there is currently about $70 billion in the DRF. So what he's saying is that pretty much you get your unemployment benefits from your state. So for instance, if $400 is the average, which is locked out on, the federal government will come in, put in 300 extra on top, as long as the state puts 100 there. And if the state can't afford it because they're out of those funds, then therefore they can apply for a waiver, and the federal government will put the whole 400 on top. I think this is something that Donald Trump did, where he goes, look at my Republicans, look at my Democrats, because here's the thing too, with the Republicans, they wanted this 400, and he even said in his speech, he wanted to provide some incentive. He felt 600 was making it too much incentive for people to stay home, where 400 was more of an incentive for some people to go to work. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's fucked up. Like, $600 is a minimal. By the way, $600 a week is $15 an hour working 40 hours. That's $600 a week. Yeah. Just so you guys know that That's what we should all be making, minimum wage. But that's unfortunately not what some people are making. They're not making a living wage. So for the first time, some people are making a living wage, and they think that's too much because they want us to be making slave wages. That's really what's going on here. They are so easy to give money to the corporations but they won't give us, the people, anything, and people aren't doing enough to demand it. We could all be doing much more to demand it. Now, the issue I have with the $400, it's something, but doing the whole $100 has to come from your state is going to be a big problem because Trump doesn't like states like California. And I don't know what Gavin Newsom's doing with our money. Like, so it's kind of like, yeah, but you don't put the people in between your fucking politics with the governors. You just don't. You automatically give people direct aid, not dependent on the state. I think that's a mistake. That's what he's getting a lot of backlash on, and I think the backlash is right because you shouldn't put that on the people because then people will suffer delays because of the politics. Well, I don't like democratic states like California, so you know what? They have to pay it. We are literally out of money. Like California,
but you know what would happen
screwed.
Though? Yeah, but because once again, California's also been giving money to contractors that don't deserve that money instead of going into the pockets of the people, and that's what he's doing. He's playing politics because of a state like California.
You don't play politics with people's money, though.
I understand, but once again, the Democrats are not doing anything. He's at least doing something, and that's the perception. It's going to come off here and whatnot. So, I mean, when he says, well, listen, I'm going to put in 300, the state has to put in 100. And if California
he's putting it on them.
If California goes, well, we don't have the money left, and he's going to say, well, what did you do with all the money? And then people are going to start looking like, what did Gavin Newsom do with all the money? He's making it a point so that they'll have to look at their own governors. Yes, is he playing that stupid politics about Democratic governors? You know what I'm saying? They're awful and their states are run down. We have to look at them. He's still playing that game and hitting that tune. But I mean, the fact that he's just saying we're going to pony up 300, and if you have to put the 100, if the state doesn't put the 100, then he could also come. Well, I'll put the extra money in there, and he's going to look like a hero again when the governor's sitting there trying to play politics with him. He's positioned himself with this money to make moves and make himself look like the hero. Right. McConnell wanted 200.
Yeah.
Okay, McConnell wants like him 200.
McConnell's a piece of shit.
Oh my God.
Know that.
So I mean,
but
this move he's made is gonna.
It's very political though. Like it's very calculated and political, and I think that's why he's getting also a lot of hate. I don't think that move is just like everybody loving it. I think it's also a lot of people being like, well, why don't we just get the money directly? I mean, bottom line, like both the Democrats and the Republicans are wasting our time. They should just be giving people direct funds like many Congress people suggested in the early times, like people like Tulsi, people like Rashida suggested. That's it. You give them each on a card. Give it to them. That's it. Every month. And now we're not, there's not even a stimulus package included in any of that. So that's not a lot of money, you guys. It's really not.
Yeah. Well, I said people are very myopic when it comes to this shit, and you know what I'm saying? They're going to get that money, I think, and they're going to make it look like the Democrats are the ones who kept it from them. So we'll see how this plays out, but the fact that they couldn't get anything through, they put Trump in a position to make himself look good and themselves look stupid. Even when Rokfin says like, well, meet us halfway, come down $1 trillion, we'll come down $1 trillion, you come up $1 trillion. It's like, it's $1 trillion, dummy. It's $1 trillion. You gave $2 trillion in the CARES Act. You kicked all this money up to all these corporations. You didn't do shit. Now you're trying to come back and circle the wagons. That's why the Democrats just stink. Fam, we have a lot of concern about what happened with Social Security because one of the 4 executive orders was the payroll tax cut, and the Democrats are harping that he's going to take that money away from and gut Social Security. Take a look at what he says about Social Security.
It may be permanent. We're looking into it. Right now, we have it cut. It's going to a certain time, as you know, and we'll take it out till the end of the year, and then I'm going to make a decision as to, number one, an extension, and number two, making it permanent, and no reimbursement.
What about Social Security? That funds the Social Security.
Yeah. Well, what we're doing is we reimburse through the general fund, not through Social Security. This will have no impact on Social Security. We're going to, through the general fund, reimburse. This will have zero impact on Social Security.
So the payroll tax goes to help Social Security, cut the payroll tax, that pulls money out of security. So security, that's what the Democrats are going to beat. But as we know, fam, money can be moved around. It always is. So I don't know if this is a really good attack. Once again, I don't know enough about the payroll tax to really make a serious comment on it. But being from Florida, real quick, and I'll hand it over to you. I remember that when they were trying to push the lottery there, we got to get the lottery, got to get the lottery. All the money from the lottery was going to be put into schools. And it did. But you know what they did? All the monies that went to the school previously was moved out and allotted somewhere else. I've seen this shit before when they do this stuff here and there. So I don't know if this attack is going to be enough of a fear weapon for the Democrats to scare people really for good. That, because Donald Trump's going to harm. We're not going to touch Social Security. We're not going to touch Social Security. When he gets reelected, he might touch Social Security.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, he can, just like any politician, he can get up here and say, no, it's not going to affect Social Security, but it could very well. The other argument is that MMT argument that no, the payroll tax does not cut Social Security because we can create money and have it be there. So, like, and that's not, it's not that. But of course, Trump and a lot of Republicans, more even than Trump, want to cut Social Security. That is a fact. I mean, that's not a lie. And the vast majority of them.
Well, I mean, a lot of Republicans did join Democrats to stop Obama from cutting Social Security when he wanted to gut. When he was trying to gut that stuff. So, the grand bargaining stuff. So, I mean,
people are very afraid of this, and I think this could actually hurt him if the narrative gets out that he is cutting Social Security, because he did run on literally not touching Social Security and the Democrats cutting Social Security. So if he's contradicting himself with older voters who are the ones that are going out to the polls, I think that could definitely hurt his base. So
Trump on Pelosi, and once again, how he can spin this here. He talks about it. Look, he's got holding all the cards. Yep.
The deal we made, we've gotten what we wanted, and they didn't get what they wanted, and they would have, and I guess they still could, in all fairness. I mean, I hear that Nancy Pelosi wants to call and she wants to see if she can do something, but they're much more inclined to make a deal now than they would have been 2 days ago.
If she calls, will you speak to her?
Yeah, I talked to him.
Mr. President, you
There you
mentioned the
go.
Postal Service.
So once again, like, he's playing that part. Yeah, I'll talk to her, and they're much more inclined now. Well, if they don't do something quick, I got a deal going through. Take it or leave it. What do you want? Boom, boom. You know what I'm saying? Donald Trump playing his cards against a weak speaker in Nancy Pelosi. A weak speaker. So
yeah, and instead of the Democrats, again, they it's their fault. Like, they led us this way. Of course, the Republican senator like Mitch McConnell, they haven't helped either. We're pretty much screwed either way, because they're playing politics with our lives is what they're doing. And Trump can make himself look better because of this. That is a fact. I mean, he absolutely can. His base will be like, well, look, he did something and he's taking care. He's in action. He's a man of action. Look at him go. Even though it's a very vague for things that he's doing. He hasn't really gone into detail about these things, but he's trying to, like, kind of have a showdown with the Democrats, and that's pretty much what's happening.
Well, can you imagine,
here.
fam, if the Democrats 2 weeks ago, instead of pushing the HEROES Act, which was an 1,800-page bill, once again, CARES Act, thousands of pages again. You do this to confuse the public, all right?
Yeah, nobody's going to read it.
Because lobbyists are writing in there. Can you imagine if they just would have done, all right, Trump had 4 executive orders, 4 pages. If they would have passed a 4-page bill out of the House, which would have said unemployment benefits, deferring the student loans, doing something real about rent, and then even leaving the payroll tax cut out of those 3 things right there, and said, okay, the House passed this, now Donald Trump, you pass this, or the Republicans, they would have gotten crucified. They would have gotten crucified and had to pass that bill, because it was all assistance given to the people, and the Democrats would have put it on Trump and the Republicans to make a move, and if they balked from there, they would have made themselves look good. But no, they didn't have to do that. They didn't do that. They had to bring up a bill, 1,800 pages, full of pork, full of stuff that has nothing to do with aid directly to the people, and they put themselves back in a corner in a position where Trump makes them look bad. They're a bunch of idiots. These Democrats need to go.
And so we have Nancy Pelosi's statement.
Oh, yeah. Can you call her Nance? I think?
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
No.
Yeah, the tweet says, today's meager announcement shows President Trump still does not comprehend the seriousness or the urgency of health and economic crises facing working families. Sorry. These policies provide little help for families. I mean, she's just Nancy Pelosi. I mean, what can she do? What can she do? It's the whole thing. He doesn't know what he's doing.
She wrote
He's
a whole
stupid.
thing on a statement. Pelosi Schumer joint statement. If you guys want to read it, I'm not going to read the whole.
You don't want to read that joint
It's a
statement?
bunch of-
Can you read it like Nancy?
No, it's a bunch of freaking platitude salad. You
Yeah.
guys, like, basically.
There it is.
So.
I mean, Jesus Christ.
And then she says we need to pray.
Oh, yeah, fam. I had to put this in here because, Nancy Pelosi's found a way.
Yeah.
Let's pray. Let's pray.
What did she say?
Negotiations going to resume, or are
Well, I hope
negotiations
so.
dead?
I hope so. We have a big difference, and here's why. For example, millions of children in America are food insecure, and their families as well. But I always like to focus on the children. In our bill, we have tens of billions of dollars to address the hunger needs in our country, which are there normally, but exacerbated during the pandemic. We have tens of billions of dollars. They have $250,000. So do they care? I have a prayer that I say, let's pray for those who are hungry. Let's pray harder for those who will not feed them. Then we go to the Princeton.
I don't want to hear her anymore. I can't hear her speak anymore. I just get nauseous when I hear this woman speak. Oh, my God.
She's sending out thoughts and prayers, just like the Republicans send out when there's a mass shooting. She's giving you the thoughts and prayers instead of taking action. If she wanted to, we could have a UBI. We could have, at least, if she got everybody to go against the Republicans, 100%, I think we could get much more than what we've gained. And Bernie.
Can I do it?
Yeah.
President Trump, stop being a phony. Your executive order on housing is a cruel joke. Your eviction moratorium won't prevent one tenant from being evicted or provide 1 red cent to pay the rent. 40 million Americans are in danger of being evicted. Stop lying and cancel the rent now. It's funny because in the HEROES Act, Bernie, there wasn't canceling the rent. Just want to say that.
So here's the thing.
Just want to say that.
There are people that are like Bernie that are attacking him like, okay, you need to cancel rent. You need to do more than this. But the thing is, Bernie, neither Pelosi nor Schumer nor the majority of those Democrats want to cancel rent either. So while I agree with everything Bernie is saying, I also think it's obviously not just Trump that's opposing the cancellation of rent. It's a bunch of Republicans and a bunch of Democrats that refuse to cancel rent. And just so overall, let's just go over the 4 things that he's going to be that he put in his executive order. Number 1, it delays the payroll tax collection for those making under $100,000 a year. 2, unemployment aid is sort of extended at $400, meaning what we already went over, the $300 plus the $100 if the state can afford it or they have to apply for a waiver. 3, top officials can consider halting evictions. So just so you guys know, I read a little bit of that. It basically means that the top officials can consider, they can see, it's up to them if they're going to grant the eviction. So it's not an eviction extension, really. It's the possibility, if they feel like extending the eviction moratorium, that they can do that. And 4, the student loan payments are deferred until December 31st. So that's that. Everything else is pretty vague. You guys can read more about it. There's an article I think I posted right above it, so you guys can go there. It kind of summarizes pretty much what is in his 4 executive orders. If you guys want to read it, it's WAPO though, so I don't know if you do, but yeah, it's still very vague. And again, I know that they're talking about getting together Congress and trying to get something else. We'll see what happens, but time is ticking. People need this money. And with no stimulus money in there as well, we're going to see a lot of people start getting really angry if something isn't done quick. So